Au loin déjà retentit sur les cieux éternels, l'aube du matin. Au plénitude ineffable, transformé de jour en jour par ton esprit adorable. Nous vivons dans ton amour, ceux dont l'âme est languissante, ceux dont le cœur est troublé, entendront ta voix puissante qui nous dit: je t'ai sauvé. Ô plénitude ineffable, transformé de jour en jour par ton esprit adorable, nous vivons dans ton amour. Avec des chants d'allégresse, les délivrés marcheront vers Sion, plus de tristesse, mais le bonheur sur leur front. Ô plénitude ineffable, transformée de jour en jour par ton esprit adorable, nous vivons dans ton amour. Ces promesses sont certaines, Jésus a tout accompli. Venez aux vives fontaines, d'où le salut jaillit. Ô plénitude ineffable, transformée de jour en jour par ton esprit adorable, nous vivons dans ton amour. Ô plénitude ineffable, transformée de jour en jour par ton esprit adorable, nous vivons dans ton amour. Amen.
Thank you. Well, happy Sabbath, everyone, especially our Northern Hemisphere family. Realise these opportunities are holy convocations, and so it's really special to be with you today and a privilege. We have a fair bit of material. I did forget. Go ahead. Happy Sabbath. It's a privilege to be with you today, and I realize it's a holy convocation when we meet like this. We have a fair bit of material to review today, so we'll make a start with prayer. Please bow. Our loving God in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to come together today. We invite your presence and all the heavenly host. May you guide our discussion and help us to become more firmly established in those things that you have taught us. We wait on you and thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. So today I'm going to review a study that was presented for the Spanish World. It is a broad review of some of our teachings. We're going to start in 1996. The time of the end magazine is written. And we now realize that prophecy has been fulfilled in 1989. Daniel 11:40, part B, has been fulfilled. The next thing to happen is Sunday law in the United States. It's an exciting message because now prophecy has been fulfilled in our generation. Prophecy is no longer a thing of the past. Of 1844 and 1798. But Sunday law didn't come next. Instead, we saw 9/11. And now we were doubly assured that we were the last generation. We immersed ourselves in Millerite history. In Revelation 8 and 9. And we knew the next thing that was going to happen was Sunday law in the United States. But Sunday law didn't come. 27 years after 1989, we get to 2016. And it will be revealed that Daniel 40, part B, contains future prophecies. Battles called Raphia and Panium. Then would come the Sunday law. So Raphia was a battle, Panium was a battle. And then the Midnight Cry message came in 2018. And we understood that 2016 and 2018 were also battles. And we could now give dates to Raphia and Panium. All of this was based on an understanding of Pyrrhus, and World War II. That taught us two streams of information. And spheres of influence. And then World War I would be open to us. And that took us back to 9/11. And 9/11 would now become 2001. Because we realized it was much bigger than one day. We looked at the Gulf War and the Iraq War. And countries like Yemen and Syria and Venezuela. Libya, Iran, Ukraine. They come into focus, and now we realize we have a global message. The war between the king of the north and the king of the south has become more complex. We also begin to unpack that 1989 was a deadly wound followed by a death. And then that at the end, there would be a deadly wound and a death of the king of the south. And now Sunday law is tied in to this message more tightly. So were we wrong in 1996? We haven't even begun to unpack 2014. In this history, we open Pandora's box. That's just full of events that we don't have a board large enough to write on. Something that was initially very simple over 30 years of development has become quite complex. And this is all half a verse. unpacking 2014 and all the history that follows it, gave us clearer insight into the Sunday law. Daniel 11, verse 41. If this half a verse was this complex, why would we expect verse 41 to be simple? It's taken half a verse and all these complex external events to lead up to Sunday law. So what we've looked here is at external events. But there were also internal events. A development of the understanding of the king and the kingdom. It stands to reason that the closer you get to an event, the more visibility or detail you're going to see of that event. So the closer we get, more detail, more complexity. Internal and external. So the question is, what does the United States look like at Sunday law? We know it won't be simple. We're going to look at some Spirit of Prophecy quotes. Great Controversy, 440, paragraph 2. Ellen White says, and I'll read the portion, what nation of the New World was in 1798 rising into power, giving promise of strength and greatness and attracting the attention of the world? The application of the symbol admits of no question. One nation and only one meets the specifications of this prophecy. It points unmistakably to the United States of America. So in this paragraph, Ellen White is clearly defining the second beast of Revelation 13 as the United States. Great Controversy 441, paragraph 1. And he had two horns like a lamb. The lamb-like horns indicate youth, innocence, and gentleness, fitly representing the character of the United States when presented to the prophet as coming up in 1798. Among the Christian exiles who first fled to America and sought an asylum from royal oppression and priestly intolerance were many who determined to establish a government upon the broad foundation of civil and religious liberty. So there are exiles from the old world to the new world. And they're escaping or seeking asylum from royal oppression and priestly intolerance. From a corrupt state and a corrupt church. They want to establish a government based on religious liberty, separation of church and state. So we will read on. Their views found place in the Declaration of Independence, which sets forth the great truth that all men are created equal and endowed with inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Constitution guarantees to the people the right of self-government, providing that representatives elected by the popular vote shall enact and administer the laws. So these exiles declared themselves independent from the motherland. Then they formalized it or made it law in the Constitution. Great Controversy 441.2. But the beast with lamb-like horns spake as a dragon, and he exercises all the power of the... Did I skip a paragraph? I'm sorry. Continuing on that paragraph. Freedom of religious faith was also granted, every man being permitted to worship God according to the dictates of his conscience. Republicanism and Protestantism became the fundamental principles of the nation. These principles are the secret of its power and prosperity. The oppressed and downtrodden throughout Christendom have turned to this land with interest and hope. Millions have sought its shores, and the United States has risen to a place among the most powerful nations of the earth. So we have two horns that represent republicanism and Protestantism. Freedom from royal oppression and priestly intolerance. Great Controversy 441.2. But the beast with lamb-like horns spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the beast whose deadly wound was healed, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. So this beast is going to speak as a dragon. And we are going to investigate what that means. So there is a change. The second beast will make an image to the first beast. The first beast had a corrupt church and a corrupt state. What does that look like for the second beast when he makes that image? Great Controversy 442.1. The lamb-like horns and dragon voice of the symbol point to a striking contradiction between the professions and the practice of the nation thus represented. The speaking of the nation is the action of its legislative and judicial authorities. By such action, it will give the lie to those liberal and peaceful principles which it has put forth as the foundation of its policy. So these horns of republicanism and Protestantism represent the profession of the United States. The dragon voice represents its practice. And Ellen White says there's a striking contradiction that has developed between the profession and the practice of the United States. She'll go on to explain more about the speaking. She explains that this speaking is the action of its legislative and judicial authorities. Legislative, that's Congress. That consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives. The judicial. That's the Supreme Court and all the other courts. So there is a striking contradiction between what the United States is professing and what it's going to speak through its legislative and judicial authorities. The last portion of the quotes says, the prediction that it will speak as a dragon and exercise all the power of the first beast plainly foretells a development of the spirit of intolerance and persecution that was manifested by the nations represented by the dragon and the leopard-like beast. And the statement that the beast with the two horns causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast indicates the authority of this nation to be exercised in enforcing some observance which shall be an act of homage to the papacy. This act of homage to the papacy is what we refer to as Sunday law. But it develops. There is a development of the spirit of intolerance and persecution before you get to the Sunday law. And Ellen White is focusing on two branches of the United States government. She does not name the executive branch. She's focusing on, she's taking our focus off the executive branch. And nowhere in these passages does she speak of these horns being broken. What exists is a striking contradiction. They say one thing, they do another. We'd call that hypocrisy. Doesn't live up to its profession. So if we go back to 2014, which is Sunday law for the priests, we see some major developments. Mitch McConnell is leader of the House minority. And he is going to block Barack Obama's nominations for the Supreme Court. No longer will there be representatives on the Supreme Court that profess freedom of religion. So major developments are connected with the judicial branch. Major developments with the legislative branch. Steve Bannon, Jeff Sessions, Stephen Miller will begin the purge of the GOP. Stephen Miller, Jeff Sessions. And the Republican Party will be purged of centrists or moderate Republicans. And become a far-right Christian extreme movement. All these developments happen while Barack Obama, a Democrat, is president of the United States. The executive branch is powerless to stop these developments. And what is set in motion in 2014 cannot be undone. So this striking inconsistency between the United States profession and its practice is in motion now. And when they give lie to their profession, they're setting up the image of the beast. And if you give homage to the papacy, you receive the mark of the beast. External events that are preparing us for the Sunday law crisis but also warnings to us as a movement. So, how does this apply to us? So we understand that the mark of the beast and the seal of God are our only two options. A mark and a seal are essentially the same thing. You could get the seal of the beast and the mark of God. Where do we receive the mark of the beast? In our hand and in our forehead. Which represents practice and profession. Seal of God. Where do we receive it? We know we receive it in our forehead. But using parable methodology, comparing and contrasting, it also has to be in our hand. Seventh-day Adventists have always been reticent to say that works have any part of our salvation. But we know that our faith, what's in our forehead, has to be demonstrated or practiced. There can be no striking inconsistencies. So what we see happening on a large scale, we are in danger of repeating on a small scale. If our practice is inconsistent with our faith, we receive the mark of the beast. Our faith, our doctrines, our teachings, our understanding of prophecy must be pure so that our practice will demonstrate that faith. So when we look at the United States, they don't stop professing. But there is no practice. Bring that into our personal lives, and that results in the mark of an image to the beast. We're the people raised to give the three angels messages. Second angel's message, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. So we're the experts on Babylon. Revelation 14:8. Babylon is what? It's a great city. How do we find out about that great city? We go to Revelation 16:19. It's divided into three parts. Verse 13, dragon, beast, false prophet. So what is the profession of these entities? If we understand their profession, we will understand their practice. So when we look at the beast, we think of Catholicism. The false prophet is Protestantism. And what have we always said the profession of the dragon is? Spiritualism, paganism, all the isms. You can put atheism in there. And what's the difference between the three? Catholicism makes a profession of Christianity, as does Protestantism. The difference with the dragon is there's no profession. When we come down to Sunday law, we have to factor in all three entities. And not just focus in on Catholicism and Protestantism. So, so what we want to explore is this relationship between profession and practice. So let's go to our major line and overlay it with the parable of agriculture. That message came in 1989, the first angel's message. Which said, wake up, you're a wicked farmer. There's a harvest coming and you're nowhere near ready. So there is a preparation, pulling out those thorns and thistles, because the fear of God's been put into you. And 9/11, you're ready to sow that seed. To germinate that seed, you're going to need rain, nice, gentle rain. Those showers are going to produce a blade. And an ear. In order to bring that fruit to maturity, latter rain is needed. Sweeten up that grain or fruit ready for harvest. Every good Adventist knows, what does fruit represent? It represents works or practice. How did it develop that fruit or grain? Through the rain. This is where you receive your faith. The rain gives us the doctrines, the messages that will develop the practice. And we all know those Ellen White quotes. That says, if you're waiting for the latter rain to correct your wickedness, you will be found wanting and not take part in the loud cry. The practice of our faith has to be demonstrated. But that fruit is developed before Sunday law. We have this time period here to get rid of any striking contradictions. All the latter rain does is ripen the fruit that already existed prior to Sunday law. What the Sunday law crisis will do is reveal what fruit you have. Our inconsistencies will be exposed. It will reveal what fruit was developed prior to Sunday law. So the agricultural model makes that very clear. The question is then, what is that practice that should be demonstrated before Sunday law? So again, the closer we get to Sunday law, the more detail we see. in the external and in the internal. Even when we're considering the internal kingdom, with Elder Parminder's studies this weekend, we're seeing more detail of the kingdom. That makes sense because we're getting closer to Sunday law. We should expect to get more clarity. Okay, so the spirit of prophecy gave us insight into how the United States will behave during Sunday law. That it's a progressive development, and we can mark 2014 as a major turning point in that development. So it is beginning the work of paying homage to the first beast. And again, the danger for us as individuals is doing the same. So, are we going for time? So we're looking at faith and practice. And I left my ruler. So what we'll do is we'll consider the line of restoration. What is it that we need to believe and to put into practice? Let's consider Eden to Eden. So Genesis chapter 1, God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he them. Male and female created he them. And he gave them dominion. So both male and female had dominion. And of course, sin enters. And they lose their dominion. They had dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air. And all of that is lost with sin. There's going to be an attempt to get dominion back. The only thing that man can have dominion over is woman. After all, it's all her fault. And so over a period of time, dominion is taken from woman and taken by man. We call it patriarchy. He can't control the birds of the air or the fish of the sea. Can't even control dirt anymore. The only thing that he can have dominion over is woman. And what could have been a blessing for both of them turns into the most abusive oppression that is possible. And that is why we say sexism is the most, the words are failing me. That's not the first word. I'll come back to it. It's the most oldest, thank you, deepest, most fundamental form of discrimination. Genesis 1, the curse of sexism. Genesis 1, Genesis 3. Genesis 4, the story of Cain. And the story of Cain is how is that discrimination that is born out of religious intolerance. Cain was determined to worship God according to his own faith. Instead of bringing a sin offering, he brings a thank offering. He was very happy with himself. Felt no need of a sin offering. But couldn't tolerate somebody who did. Someone who practiced what they believed. And so we see, I'll just put FW for false worship here. The curse that comes from intolerance. We come down to Genesis 10. And that story has been told very well. The curse of Ham. And the result of racism and ultimately slavery. And what's our very next story? The very next story is Genesis chapter 11. And it's the story of the Tower of Babel. So we're going to take a little look at that story. And if you could turn to Genesis 11. Sorry, I've misplaced my Bible. I've got it. Genesis 11. Genesis 11, we'll read the first 4 verses. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, "Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." So this is post-flood. All the people have been living up in the mountains. But as the numbers have increased, apostasy has created divisions. And those that don't want to worship the Creator and keep his laws they cannot tolerate those that do. They pack up and head to the plains. And they're going to build a city and a tower. There was a time that when we saw city and tower, we saw church and state. The city being the state and the tower being the church. But we want to have a closer look at what that tower represented. We're going to go to Patriarchs and Prophets, 119, paragraph 1. The dwellers on the plain of Shinar disbelieved God's covenant that he would not again bring a flood upon the earth. Many of them denied the existence of God and attributed the flood to the operation of natural causes. Others believed in a supreme being and that it was he who had destroyed the antediluvian world, and their hearts, like that of Cain, rose up in rebellion against him. So let's notice these people who have built the tower. Have they built a church? They don't even believe in God. They deny his existence. And those that do believe he exists don't like him. Ellen White describes what the tower consisted of. There were rooms for the workers, and rooms for their idols. What kind of idols do you make when you don't believe in God? These are atheists or non-theists. There's a slight difference. If we go to Patriarchs and Prophets 118.5. The magnificent tower, reaching to the heavens, was intended to stand as a monument of the power and wisdom of its builders, perpetuating their fame to the latest generations. What were they worshipping? What did those idols represent? Their own power and wisdom. Human glory. Idols of silver and gold represent human glory. So this is a tower, but not as a church as we understand it today. Were they religious? Yes, but they worshipped themselves. So God comes down to see what they're doing. And he recognizes that if he does not intervene now, there will be nothing will restrain them. So he's going to confound their language. I'm just going to give you a few quotes from Google, and you can do this yourself. Google language and culture. The phrase language is culture and culture is language is often mentioned when language and culture are discussed. It's because the two have a homologous, although complex, relationship. They're similar, they have the same structure. Language and culture developed together and influenced each other as they evolved. They are inseparable because language encodes culture and provides the means which culture is shared and passed from one generation to the next. Humans think in language and do all cultural activities using language. Human language can be considered a culture's most important feature, since complex human culture could not exist without language, and language could not exist without culture. All these people that are going to be scattered, what are they going to take with them? Language, culture. You cannot separate the two. All their languages may be different, but what is the backbone of all their culture? Sexism, false worship, racism. Spread all across the world. These people that could not tolerate others that worshipped God now can't tolerate each other. And this tower implodes. That's the fall of Babel. So we see spread across the world cultures that have sexism, false worship, and racism at their very heart. There's not a culture that is not influenced by them. And of course, we know that not everybody was scattered. Some stayed, and the city of Babylon became established. And as time goes on, Babylon will start making a profession of Christianity. But behind that profession is still sexism, a false worship, and racism. The difference is all of these that are scattered across the world make no profession. There will be a development of Babylon that will eventually make a profession. That will give lie to their profession, that will have a striking inconsistency. So we'll leave it here for the moment. We started by looking at the complexity of Daniel 11:40 Part B. As an introduction and a proof of how complex Sunday law will be, verse 41. When we look at the Sunday law test, we understand that the image, the mark of the beast will be received by those whose faith and practice are inconsistent. Whose profession and practice are a lie. And now we've gone back into history to determine, well, what is it that we need to be practicing? What is this fruit that needs to be developed before the crisis? So we'll close with prayer and have a short break. Our loving God, we are in awe of your patience and long-suffering with your people. And we wait on your goodness to show us more of what we need in this time period. Bless this small break so that we may rest a little before returning. In Jesus' name, amen.
Donc, nous remercions vivement l'ancienne Terrie pour ce merveilleux message.
Carl, tu peux commencer? So we would like to thank Elder Terrie for the first part of her message. So we will have a break of 5 to 10 minutes max. So we will close the Zoom. So the technical team will close the Zoom, and we ask you to reconnect straight after. So we will close during for 5 minutes, but disconnect and reconnect straight away, especially the new translator. Thank you very much.